Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Fontaine speculation season, and today I'm excited because I have a spicy video for you. Now, as we all know, and especially if you watched my previous video, Fontaine has been an enormous release for Genshin Impact as a game. The Nation of Wisdom completely elevated the bar of not only the lore and storytelling of the game, but more importantly the gameplay of Genshin, with the addition of the element of Dendro, which incorporated several new reactions and added a lot of new viable team compositions. This is all without mentioning all the intricacies that Dendro added when it comes to open world exploration and puzzle solving. So as we all know, the gameplay is always the most important and most vital component of a game. After all, it's part of the name. Gameplay. Gameplay, game. Video games will rise and fall, live and die depending on the quality of the gameplay. However, Sumeru's time is up, and Fontaine's time is now, even if we cannot see it yet. But as the Nation of Lore and Wisdom closes its doors and steps down, it's leaving behind a vacuum that will not easily be filled. At the end of the day, it's extremely difficult to compete with the hype and the gameplay rejuvenation that an entirely new element can bring. And while I trust that the story and lore and open world exploration of Fontaine are going to be top tier, it is how the nation will affect the gameplay that I'm truly interested in. So, let's discuss the top 5 changes that Hoyoverse can add with Fontaine. And buckle up, because this will be a good one. So, the very first game edition or gameplay edition that I want to talk about is the diving mechanics slash underwater exploration mechanics slash maybe underwater combat, but this one is a little bit too optimistic. So this was teased with the very first Fontaine teaser, where they showed us Aether swimming in the water, and people expect him diving underwater. That being said, you have to keep in mind this is not 100% confirmed, because the animation that Aether was using while moving in that teaser, if you compare it to this one side by side, you're gonna notice that it was actually just the slow swimming animation. So we do not actually know for sure if we're getting diving mechanics or underwater exploration. That being said, in the teaser they showed us a bunch of underwater sceneries with plants and a lot of details, plus a lot of new types of fish underwater. So it is a fair assumption to think that at the very least we're gonna get something that is related to the ocean, or like underwater exploration. So, is this going to be a good addition? I think it will be. That being said, that depends on the scope of the addition. If it's only within Fontaine, this addition is going to be fine. It's going to introduce a lot of cool exploration mechanics into Fontaine. That being said, what could really elevate that idea is if they expanded the underwater exploration across Tevat. Now, obviously, they don't have to do it everywhere. Like, for example, this whole area would be enormous. This is an entire new nation if they add underwater exploration all over here. So I'm expecting like maybe underwater exploration around the Liyue Harbor, underwater exploration around like this beach area, around Dragonspine, maybe around Falcon Coast, and especially in all of the small tributaries, rivers, and lakes in Tevat. That would be really awesome. That being said, the highest likelihood is that it's only going to be limited to Fontaine. And keep in mind, we don't even know if this is going to happen. Like, we don't... Again, this is just the animation of Aether is just the normal swimming animation. But if they add it, it will be cool. Not the one that I'm looking forward to the most, at least not in this video. I have way better propositions in this video. That being said, something else that could be really nice if they added it, and this could be fine if they made it limited only to Fontaine, because it's a really big change, is if they added underwater combat, because a different underwater environment could make different characters that might not necessarily be viable in the open world, or characters that are not really used that much be used way more. Like, for example, I would imagine underwater electro characters would be way more dangerous because you would kill yourself if you shock the water area around you. That being said, pyro characters will probably be better because you're guaranteed to always get vaporizes since you're underwater, so you're always vaporizing whatever you're hitting. These are obviously just some examples. Again, not really the greatest of additions. We're most likely going to get it within the first few weeks of Fontaine. That being said, it's not confirmed, not guaranteed, but it is the most likely. The second gameplay adjustment that I want to talk about, and this is my first real proposition in this video, is for Hoyoverse to introduce new gameplay mechanics that facilitate already existing and underperforming characters. Characters like Dia and Candace, but we'll get to those later. To be more viable, or gameplay mechanics which propagate the creation of team compositions where defensive utility is fundamental. And here's what I mean by that. If you look closely and examine the last 10 character releases in Genshin Impact, you will notice that the 7 characters out of the last 10 that came out are characters which focus on defensive utility or defensive mechanics. In other words, we have been getting defensive characters since patch 3.2 with Layla. And that's over 210 days as of the time of recording of this video of straight up defensive characters with 3 offensive characters amongst those 10. In fact, I can go a step further and say that the last 6 character releases have been defensive ones, which translates to over 150 days of straight up defensive characters. When taking Dendra into consideration, an element that contains multiple reactions which deal damage to your own characters when they proc them, the heavy focus on defensive designs partially makes sense. However, it is not just that. The gameplay itself is getting more and more dangerous, and Hoyoverse has been releasing new enemies that punish players for fighting poorly, such as the Consecrated Beasts. And if we look at the current Abyss cycle, well, we notice that the enemies do ludicrous amounts of damage, being able to stunlock and one-shot most characters. This is without mentioning artifact sets such as Vorkasha's Glow, which reward you for losing health. I think that it is abundantly clear now with Sumeru that we are seeing a major shift in Hoyoverse's design philosophy, where they are slowly integrating concepts of defensive characters as vital components of a team composition, and this is an excellent idea. Not only are damage-oriented characters limited by the fact that at the end of the day you can only make so many of them, but a greater emphasis on defensive designs will allow for more unique and interesting kits such as Dia's to shine and be more useful. And to my point, Fontaine should take what Sumeru has built and push it to the next level. Instead of damaging yourself through your own reactions, introduce new mechanics either through new characters or via external environments, both are fine, that directly damage your own team and or drain your HP, and flat HP points here. And this is very important, let me explain why. Percentage HP does not make HP stat more valuable, but flat HP points, flat HP drainage, actually makes HP scaling more viable. So, for every flat point of HP that gets drained of your character, you get various buffs like more elemental damage or more crit damage. For example, these are just examples. This would make characters such as Dee and Candice, who have direct HP scaling, way more viable and useful. And furthermore, it would allow for the developers to design new characters in Fontaine that are focused on such new mechanics which facilitate new types of gameplay and new team compositions. Moving on, another major gameplay adjustment that Hoyoverse can make with Fontaine, and this is really big, is reworking the geo element. First and foremost, I must add the following. Before you say that reworking an entire element would mean that the gameplay of your favorite geo character will change and you will not be able to enjoy them again, well, I'll be the first to tell you that this will not occur. And here's why. Reworking an element is significantly different than reworking the characters within that element. Because reworking the element itself entails an overhaul of the elemental reactions of the said element. Sure, some characters might require minor adjustments, such as a small number tweak, and or elemental gauge recalibrations, and or internal cooldown recalibrations to accommodate for the set change, but the character's kit will remain exactly the same. If anything, a geo rework would only open up more options for those characters. And all you need is but a single look at the current 8 geo characters in the game to verify what I just said. We can immediately put Noelle, Arataki Ito, and Goro in the same zone, since these 3 characters are almost exclusively played in mono geo team compositions, where they use geo resonance alongside each other's buffs in order to output raw geo damage. As for flexible geo characters such as Yunjin and Zhongli, well, these characters almost never utilize Crystallize as a reaction due to having alternative artifact options, in addition to Archaic Petra and Crystallize in general just being clunky and inefficient. The primary reason Zhongli and Yunjin are used outside Mono Geo is due to the fact that they were blessed with kits that transcend their element and allow them to function beyond elemental reactions. What I'm trying to say is, Zhongli and Yunjin would only benefit from a geo rework that would introduce more useful reactions for them to capitalize on. And when it comes to Ningguang and Albedo, well, unfortunately these 2 characters possess kits that are remnants of an ancient design philosophy that Hoyoverse has long abandoned. This is from way back when in 2020. As for Geo Traveler, well, this one is a meme. You only really use him in exploration or with Geo Construct teams alongside Zhongli. Hoyoverse have proved in the past that they are willing to buff certain mechanics in the game if such mechanics prove to be underperforming. Back in patch 1.6, during the release of Kazuha, the developers significantly buffed Crystallize along with transformative reactions to make them scale more aggressively with Elemental Mastery. And on a similar scale, but a much smaller one, they adjusted certain weapons and artifact sets before the release of Sumeru in order to accommodate for the elements of Dendro. Now, if we are talking about serious Geo rework, then Crystallize will either have to be severely changed or completely removed. That mechanic simply does not work well with the elemental reactions in Genshin and has to go. But what new reactions could the developers add to Geo instead of Crystallize? Well, on this one, your guess is as good as mine. I have no clue. I'm just kidding. Partially, at least. See, the thing is, this video is about the biggest changes that Hoyoverse could add along with the release of Fontaine. And reworking an entire element is such an enormous undertaking that if Hoyoverse are going to do it, they probably already completed the vast majority of what should be done. It is not like the developers will wake up one day, like today, watch this video and decide, yeah, we gotta start working on the rework right now. Like, at this point in time, they either got it or they don't. And I really hope they do. So, instead of wasting everyone's time by speculating on potential reactions, I will briefly mention a few other ways the developers can go about with buffing the Geo element without necessarily reworking it. First, they could start by adjusting Archaic Petra artifact set, to make it so that anyone who picks up the Crystallized Shard would grant the team the corresponding elemental buff. Honestly, this is such a simple and an unbelievably lazy change to make Geo viable across reaction teams that I am completely baffled by the fact that Hoyoverse have not done it yet. Another option that I do not really like, well, they can simply release a completely new Geo character that is all about synergizing with the elemental team compositions. And perhaps that character also facilitates other Geo characters to do the same if they are on the same team. And this is not a good concept in my opinion. While a Geo character that provides unique Crystallize interactions like making them explode or applying team-wide buffs through Crystallize is cool, that still does not address the core issue of Geo and pretty much leaves all other Geo characters behind. Furthermore, if the set character is far too good, he or she will automatically become the best Geo character in the game, and everyone will have to pull for that character or miss out on Geo's full elemental reaction potential. There are other reasons why a single character won't fix the problems of Geo. However, I think that you all get the point by now, so let us move to the next gameplay change. Another equally major but significantly easier gameplay update that could be done along with Fontaine is, well, how do I put this one? Maybe remember that physical damage exists as a damage archetype in the game. This change is so simple that I really do not want to talk about it that much. All that needs to be done is add more characters that are physically oriented and supplement the playstyle of physical damage. Again, this is a simple change, new supportive artifact sets, new physical characters, maybe some off-field physical sub-DPS units, a physical Xingqiu, or a physical Albedo that would be really cool. Mika is fine, but him on his own is not good enough to bring back Eula and Drazer from beyond the world of the living. Every character that is not a Catalyst user has access to physical damage. No, we're not going to talk about Skyward Atlas. So, there is no shortage of characters that can utilize physical mechanics. You just need to hone their blades until they are sharp enough to sever the strongest of steel. And now, let us talk about the real reason I made this video. Yeah, I left the best for last. Now, while I do think that this is the best possible gameplay change / addition that Hoyoverse can possibly incorporate into Genshin alongside Fontaine, I highly doubt that it will come out with Fontaine. In fact, I do not know if such a thing will ever come out for the foreseeable future. But come on, one can dream, right? Back when I first started playing Genshin Impact, and this is a really long time ago, like Dragon's Spine not on the map time ago, I took this game as a casual open-world exploration game that I would play every now and then, you know, just for fun and exploration. And many people, even to this very day, play Genshin as a fun side game for exploration. And obviously, there is nothing wrong with that. Genshin, after all, prides itself on being an open-world game that offers players a massive variety of ways through which they can have fun. That being said, the longer I played, the more I began to hear about this thing called Spiral Abyss. And mind you, this is a really early time back in the game's infancy. A point in time where the vast majority of players had poor game knowledge and underdeveloped accounts with under-leveled characters and artifacts. So, like any curious young explorer, I traveled to Musgrave after solving a few puzzles and reaching the Spiral Abyss. I cleared all the way up to floor 3, got my Xiangling, and was satisfied because back then I heard that Xiangling was a great physical DPS. Yes, guys, I really meant it when I said this was a long time ago. And then I left. After playing through the game and leveling up my account, I decided to give Spiral Abyss, Genshin's supposed endgame, a real try. And from then onwards, I consistently 36 starred every moon phase to date. But it did not take long for me to notice the problem. You see, Spiral Abyss is not endgame. It is just the illusion of endgame content. For all intents and purposes, Spiral Abyss to this day just serves as a lazy method through which Hoyoverse can consistently incentivize players to pull for that new shiny 5-star in order to get through the chambers for each floor, as efficiently as possible. Simply look at the Spiral Abyss enemies and Leyline Disorders. They are always made to work well with the current character on banner. The current Spiral Abyss of patch 3.7, for example, heavily rewards players who pull and invest in Baizu or Yoimiya. Having Spiral Abyss favor the current character on banner is just a sales tactic, which by extension makes Spiral Abyss less of a gameplay mode and more of a sales pitch every now and then for like the new 5-star. But I chose not to give up. I took my Copium tank and began huffing, telling myself, surely Hoyoverse are waiting for Sumeru in order to release all the 7 elements so that they can better balance the real endgame mode. Surely Hoyoverse knows that the combat is a fundamental and major aspect of Genshin Impact, and that a lot of players, including the vast majority of people who spend on the game, want a repeatable and enjoyable endgame mode. Surely they... Wait. Oh. Hoyoverse, what the hell are you doing? So, we are almost into version 4.0, and, well, Genshin Impact, a live service game that is heavily focused on selling characters that are primarily used in freestyle third-person open-world combat, while also having extremely well-designed and intricate elemental reaction systems to further boost the depth of team compositions and combat playstyles. A game that quite literally has an artifact system designed to be a never-ending grind for the chance of continuously upgrading your characters and pushing them to the next level. Still has no real endgame. Surely we'll get the real endgame with Fontaine. Okay, I'll stop. But let us actually think a little bit here. If Hoyoverse is to add a fun, repeatable, rewarding, and challenging endgame mode in Fontaine, what would it actually be? Obviously, no one wants another version of what we already have. Like, Spiral Abyss Pro Max would just be Abyss, but we go deeper into Hell. It's not really a new idea. But I, my friend, have a more interesting proposition to make. Instead of looking down, why don't we look up? Okay, hear me on this one. If you stand in Mondstadt, Liyue, and Sumeru, and record the position and direction of Celestia, you can actually make an approximate calculation of where the city in the sky is geographically located. In fact, someone already did that, multiple times. And every estimation they got is close to the others. Here is a map from Genshin's wiki showing the average of the results, which shows the approximate position of Celestia and Teyvat. And it's currently in the middle of nowhere. But if you pay attention to Fontaine's NPCs across many story quests and temporary events in Genshin, you will notice that some of them tell you which direction they came from. Dvořák, in patch 3.4, said that he passes through the Stone Gate, a location between Mondstadt and Liyue, before arriving at Liyue. While our good friend Julien here says that before getting stuck in the desert, he had come down south. In other words, he started northwards. This pretty much confirms that the current empty patch of land directly beneath Celestia belongs to Fontaine. In the end, water is the source of all life, so it makes sense that Fontaine is located in the heart of Teyvat. Now, at the start of this video, I said that I trust the story of Fontaine will be good. And so far in Genshin, the primary antagonists of the story have always been either the Abyss Order or the Fatui of Snezhnaya. Somehow, 3 years into the game, we have yet to see a single one of the gods in Celestia. We have not encountered the most powerful beings in Tevat. The gods of Celestia. Being so powerful, the 7 victors of the Archon Wars fear and respect them. They are the very group that is primarily responsible for anything and everything taking place in the story right now. And somehow, we have only met a single one of them before the game even starts. That being said, everything leading up to Fontaine seems to suggest that we will finally encounter the Divine. After all, Folklore, the god of justice, fears them. And so far, we have fought a full-fledged god in every nation besides Mondstadt. So Hoyoverse will need something to top what we have already fought so far. And who better than Celestia would there be? But allow me to put a little twist on things. What if, instead of fighting Celestia, we ally with them and we gain access to Celestia itself? Or some of it, at least. Now, look. I know that allying with a group of genocidal world subjugators is not really something that the Traveler would realistically do. But listen, the Traveler has no idea who Celestia is. And even though Apep told us that they are invaders from beyond the world, every single god we have met so far that is directly allied with Celestia appears to be a good friend of the Traveler, or at least a close ally. What if the Fatui or the Abyss Order commit a crime that is so heinous in Fontaine that the gods of Celestia can leverage it to their advantage to manipulate the Traveler into joining their side without any major conflict? The enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing. Okay. I'm not really interested in actually brainstorming the story right now. This video is more concerned with the ends rather than the means. So what I'm trying to say is, Hoyoverse, use Fontaine as an opportunity to take us to Celestia, where the real endgame mode can be located. It can be something like the Simulated Universe in Honkai Star Rail, or the Labyrinth Warriors Limited Time event from patch 2.2 with Tartalia, or a combination of both, or something else entirely. Honestly, I do not care. Hoyoverse, this is your chance. Fontaine is the perfect nation. Just give us a reason to go up into Celestia, and then give us a reason to stay there once and for good. Hoyoverse, it is so difficult to mess this up. Just imagine the potential for endgame in Celestia. Like, a god comes into Fontaine, and he's like,
Oh ho ho! Monsieur Traveler! These filthy humans want le pain! Up in Celestia, we tell them, mangez des biscuits, Traveler! Fuck this petit paillement! I give you le baguette! You come with me up to Celestia! Oh, Monsieur Traveler, oui, le Tsaritsa wants rebellion on us, Celestia, sur nous are gonna clap her ass, Traveler, and show her who is boss.
I'm losing my mind. Okay, I think you guys get what I mean right now. At this point, all I'm trying to say is, hopefully Fontaine fixes the problem of Genshin having completely nothing to do in the endgame, and we end up getting a proper endgame mode. Whether it's in Celestia or not, it doesn't really matter. Okay, this is me from the future. You have successfully reached the end of this video. I hope that you have found it to some capacity at least useful or enjoyable or entertaining in some way. I do have to say, realistically speaking, I'm honestly not too optimistic about what's going to happen in Fontaine. I'm not keeping my expectations low on purpose. I just don't really think that they have much yet. Maybe in like patch 4.2, 4.3, but 4.0 seems like it's going to be just Fontaine. That being said, the water diving mechanic might actually be a real thing. We don't know yet. It might be, and it's probably the most likely out of the 5 things I mentioned this video. Obviously, a fix and a rework to geophysical and a new endgame mode would all be amazing. But we will see. Hopefully all 5 are true, but I think we just need to take these with a big grain of salt. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope that you have a great rest of your day or night, and take care. I'll catch you all in the next time.